It's time for The Perspective with your hosts, Pastor Mike Sherbino, who's always got a good old-fashioned joke or two, but most importantly, new perspectives on God's love that will lift you up. And Julie Stautland, whose steadfast devotions and dedication will inspire you. On The Perspective, we welcome a host of thought leaders, healers, followers, seekers, all to hear God's voice as we ask, as the psalmist did, let the morning bring us word of your unfailing love.
Hey, welcome to The Perspective today. I'm back with my co-host, Julie Stautland. Julie, we missed you the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
I was going to say my younger, old co-host, but you're younger, but you've been here for quite a while.
Yeah, you better be careful how you say that.
You got to be careful how you use the words, eh?
I'm just saying.
See, and that's what happens at the home and in the home, right?
I can understand that.
Yeah, you get mixed up and you just kind of go back and forth. Parenting kids, like I put my foot in my mouth more than once. And you know, now that I have adult kids, I finally got all the answers.
You do you?
But they changed all the questions. What about you as a parent? You got to figure it out?
Oh, always learning. Always learning. It's one phase to the next phase, and just hoping that I can be inspired every day to say the right thing.
Inspired to say the right thing. Yeah. I've been reading a book on adult parenting.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm just kind of way over my pay grade.
It's way over your head. No, I mean, we need it, though. I mean, you think about young adults today and everything that they're faced with. And it's not just getting them through university, college, or into their job. It's how do you navigate this thing called life?
Well, today, we got an organization with us. Actually, it's two people representing an organization,
Right.
the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada.
Great organization.
Great organization. In their magazine, Faith Today, which I am devouring, there's a cover story on parents, kids, and faith.
Yes.
And we've got two of their leading people that are going to come and talk to us about this. We got Rick Heamstra and Lindsay Calloway, and I want to welcome them right now.
Yes.
Thanks, folks, for being with us. We're so glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
And we're going to jump right in, Rick, with this study that you did, maybe a little bit of a background, but why study what parents are doing at home with children, apart from my own confessional mistakes?
Yeah. Well, we're all learning about what it means to be parents. We had about 17 organizations that came together to do the study with us. And we're all concerned that our kids grow to know Jesus and come to faith. And we wanted to know how we could help parents in their role in discipling their kids in the home. So that's where this came from. And this started just back in 2019 before the pandemic. And we have been learning since then. And we just released our report after Easter.
Well, what were some of the questions that happened as you tried to unpack this subject? What were you asking people?
We were asking things like, how do parents understand their role as faith formers of their children? We were asking things like, what do you do in the home? What is your relationship with your local church? How do they support you? Where do you find supports for faith formation? Lots of questions like that.
Were you surprised by some of the answers?
I would say we were. I think one of the biggest surprises was, we talked with ministry leaders who had ministries to families and parents, and their concerns tended to be different than the concerns that the parents had. So we saw a bit of a gap between these ministry practitioners and what they identified as the needs of parents, and then what the parents themselves said were their needs. So that was something surprising to me.
Lindsay, what are parents doing to pass on their faith onto their children? What did you find from that?
Right. So most parents agree that to pass faith on to your kids, you need to teach and model what you believe. But another key theme was parents said that they were purposely trying to parent and disciple their children differently than how they were raised. So most parents told us that they lacked explanation as children, or that unquestioning obedience was required and demanded of them. So we saw a bit of a pendulum swing in that on one hand, parents were focusing on things like explanation, teaching, conversation, but also on the other hand, providing things like choice, options, and exposure to other ways of thinking. But when you have these approaches, right? We saw a gap in teaching children to learn how to apply their faith. So a parent might model prayer to their child, or they might tell their child that they ought to pray, but are you really inviting your child into pray as a participant, as somebody who's communing with God? So we saw a bit of this gap in how to use some of these faith tools and apply them to build a strong and healthy and resilient faith.
Interesting you talk about that, because I think of my own upbringing in a faith-filled home, but there was an unwritten code that you never challenged what you were told to do or how you were told to think. And I have to admit, in my early days of parenting, that was kind of, that was a whole new territory when my own kids would say, well, Dad, why do we do this? Or what's this all about? You got any comments on that?
Well, certainly I think it's a good thing that we're explaining the faith, because we all need to understand why we believe. What I think has happened, though, is that our culture has changed, and that parents now told us in the interviews, and we were talking with evangelical parents, that they saw a big part of their role as providing options for their kids, or to expose their kids to different options. And one of the unintended consequences of that, I think, is that we diminish the option that is Christ. And a lot of parents would tell us that they want their kids to choose Christ, but they don't want to put their thumb on the scales in the home where they have sort of that control and authority over their kids. And so they're backing off. They're sort of pulling back a little bit in their discipleship of their kids.
Rick, do you think these trends are unprecedented? Like, is there any time in history where this has kind of happened before?
I think that we've always had people who didn't like the way that they were raised, and they decided to do something different. But I do think that we are in an unprecedented kind of situation now where our understanding of what it means to believe is changing. I was talking a little bit with Mike about this earlier, and right now, what we think that we need to do for our kids is we need to help them connect with something called their authentic self. And this is a little bit different than connecting with God, right? So in the past, we would have said to our kids, and I hope that there's still parents that are doing this today, that the big relationship that needs to be healed is the relationship that you have with God. And through a whole bunch of reasons now, we feel this in our culture, that the relationship that needs to be healed is the relationship between me and what we call who I really am, which is a deeper me.
Where do you think this whole concept has come from? And in particular, Rick, I'd like you to address parents have changed their thinking. Suddenly, I want my kids to be a follower of Jesus, but I don't want to push it. Where has that pressure come from for parents today? Because I've seen it over and over again.
I think it comes from this idea that that in order for my kids to connect with their deep, authentic self, that we actually believe in our culture that will be unique and that nobody can help them with that. And so to the extent that our beliefs and our faith are a deep part of who we are, and our true identity is a deep part of who we are, we think that has to be unique and just found by our kids. And so we don't want to get in the way of that. And we feel that if we get in the way of that and present the faith, the once received, and that my faith looks like your faith, well, then if my faith looks like your faith, I've found your faith, and I've imposed that. And I think that we feel that more than we're able to articulate that. And that's something that's out there in the culture. And, this is what, philosophers call the authentic self. And it is just making us really reticent to do evangelism. It's making us really reticent to disciple our kids in the home.
Very interesting times that we're in. We're going to have to take a short break, but stay with us, everyone. We're going to be right back after this with more with Rick and Lindsay. Thank you so much.
For those of us who follow Jesus, we have a book. It isn't a theology book. It isn't a rule book. This book is a story. The story of God and humanity. A story Jesus said he was fulfilling. This book contains poems, riddles, letters, puzzling narratives, and new ideas. Yet, throughout it all, this book is full of the breath of God. For those of us who follow Jesus, this book is a treasure. This book is a tree of life. This book is a page turner. Turn the page with us.
Well, I want to pose this next question to Lindsay as we're talking about trends that are unprecedented and the idea of how the Bible inside has now become, I am my authority. Expound on that. And what was the information that you found through this research?
Right. Well, even today, I think sometimes the word authority doesn't land well on contemporary ears. But if we think about it, authority has really moved to the self. And if we think about this idea of the authentic self, if I am my authority, what does that mean for those external authorities, like parents, like pastors, like teachers? So in the past, we used to place authority outside of ourselves to the Bible, to God, to the church. And it's important to understand that that authority has been transferred to the self, and which often leads to a rejection then of any sort of authoritative voices who might tell the self to change, who might tell the self what is good and what is the right thing to do.
So Lindsay,
I think we have to.
Sorry, Rick, you're going to add something?
Yeah, I think we have to understand that this is a relational question about moving the authority inside.
Right.
When people propose this, what they're reacting to is a sense that they can't trust these external authorities, and so what they do is we've talked about this in our culture. We deconstruct all of the authorities. We say this is what's wrong with them, and then once we've done that with everything else, all that's left is me, and so I have to conclude then that I should be my authority because I'm all that's good.
Okay, that's a stretch, but you know what? That is the logical way to go.
It is true,
And,
right? Yeah.
Just for the record, I'm going to confess that's not me, but I hear it, and that's the logical way. So, Lindsay, what do I do as a parent? If I do actually think that Scripture is my authority, it's my guide, how do I incorporate that into working with my children without being an authoritarian?
Yeah, it's hard. I have young children, so this is a question that I am wrestling with myself. But I think, to emphasize things like choice and a self, I think we have to just bring that into submission of what the Bible says about truly viewing who we are as humans and who we are created to be, and how looking into Jesus is actually going to make us the truest self, the most fulfilled person is following in his image and in his way. And so I think what is important then is to try to teach our children to be virtuous choosers, to help them become people who know what is good and to choose what is good.
Lindsay, you also asked parents to list what kinds of faith activities their families did at home. Why was this part of your study?
Well, only God knows the heart, but what we can do as researchers is we can look at behaviors. And we do this in the Christian life. We can look for certain behaviors and characteristics as evidence of belief, like the fruit of the Spirit. So in the realm of research, we often look to these behaviors as indicators of what people believe. So we asked about activities like Bible reading, prayers, hymn singing. And why did we do this? Well, what we expect is if faith is successfully being passed on, we would expect to see children's participation in these faith activities come to the same rate of their parents' participation as they become older and as their faith becomes their own. So in our study, we asked parents to tell us about their faith activities, and then we asked them to tell us about their children's participation in faith activities. And we surveyed over 1,200 parents, and they represented over 3,000 children in Canada. Wow. So we were able to get this great picture of not only what parents are doing at home, but what their kids are doing and at what age. And again, we expect to see that if faith is successfully being passed on, We want to see the behaviors of the parents replicated and adopted by their children as they get older.
So you walk the walk and talk the talk, if it matches.
Hey, Rick,
Right.
I want to ask you a question. Maybe, Lindsay, you're going to chime in on it, but it seems daunting to be a parent. I've said to my wife,
Yes.
I would not want to start over at this stage in the game. Why are parents feeling so unprepared? Is it all because of what you've said, the pressure of society, that everything is just should be put out there like a smorgasbord and let people choose? Or is there something else?
I think there's a couple of things. One, we talked earlier about how we're trying not to parent like our parents. And that means that there's this generational break. We are cut off from the wisdom of our parents. And we are looking to things more likely like podcasts. We are looking to things like our friends and a lot of information sources that we curate. Another thing that I think has left us really unprepared is just dealing with technology and trying to figure out how to manage our kids' digital lives. And this is something that parents talked about an awful lot of how challenging it was to deal with just the sheer volume of everything that their kids are taking in.
And how do you speak into that? It is a huge problem when you think about you're trying to instill values and yet so much of screen time is on their own and you really don't know what is being influenced or put out there. Was there anything in particular that came up in research about that, of how parents were trying to navigate that?
I think you're absolutely right, Julie, that it is a question of screen time for many parents. And what we found was that the number one way that parents tried to manage their kids' digital lives was through limiting screen time. But what we realized is that to the extent that faith formation is conversations about what their kids are experiencing, asking them, how does this line up with your faith? What does this say about your relationship with God? There is just this whole vast swath of kids' lives here now where we don't know who they're associating with. We don't know what they're consuming. And because there's just too much of it. And so we are not in a place to disciple our kids about all this big portion of their lives that we actually don't know what's going on. And so we limit screen time as if we're limiting harm, but we're not discipling them about that screen time because we can't.
Right. The other word that keeps coming up to me is accountability. When we talk about the fact that we're challenging authority, and it's not like Bible or pastors or churches or organizations, and I am my authority. What is happening to accountability? Was that talked about in the research of like how are families or parents or children, who are they choosing to be accountable to, or are they not at all?
I think that's a good question. And I think what we found was that parents tended to cut themselves off from these channels of accountability. The church was seen more as a place that would kind of pour into individual social and intellectual needs rather than a place where faith journeys and discipleship was going to happen. And then, as Rick mentioned too, the resources that parents tended to consult were ones that you can turn off or turn down or close the book if you didn't like what you were reading. So we really want to make the case to move discipleship into these relational contexts where the people who can speak into your life, who can provide that accountability, are people who know you, are people who love you, and can actually speak directly into your life and walk alongside you. The parents wanted to have friends, people who could walk beside, but they really lacked people who had gone before them and who they could access their wisdom. So we want to advocate for really, I think the church as the body of Christ is meant to be there to be a support to parents. And it didn't seem like it was being accessed in a way that would hold parents accountable, but also help and support them.
Time always goes so quick on the show. Final comments. If you could leave us with one thought, a takeaway that was key to you, what would it be? I'm going to start with you, Rick.
I think that parenting is hard. Parenting is hard, and we need the help of the church. We need the help of our parents, and we need the help of God. And what we have to start doing is thinking about how can we do this together? How can we figure out how to disciple our kids and walk with each other?
Lindsay, I'm going to give you the final word.
I would echo what Rick says. Parents do not have to do this alone. And so where can they find that community? I really think that the place is the church. And maybe I'm coming at that as a pastor's wife. I might be biased, but look to the church, and you don't have to do it alone.
Fantastic. Well, Lindsay Calloway and Rick Heamstra with the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. I want to encourage people to get a copy of Faith Today. It's an amazing write. And you know what? Just Google EFC Canada, and you'll find out where all the resources are. Folks, thank you for being with us. We look forward to having you back very soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Joy Barbeau, former national sportscaster, founder of I'm Changing the Narrative, and upcoming author of a book called Relentless Joy. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But first, I want to drop a nugget of wisdom on you. Have you even pondered, I talk about this about upcoming book, what your ancestors went through? I'm talking about your grandmother's grandmother and your grandfather times 20 for you to even be alive today. Odds are they went through being displaced from their land. They might have gone through slavery. They might have gone through the Depression. They might have gone through food scarcity. You don't know what they went through just for you to be alive today. So let me drop this on you. How dare you not go for that dream? How dare you not go for that job? How dare you not start that business? How dare you not mend that relationship? How dare you not live your life to the absolute fullest? They gave everything for you to be alive today. And so did Jesus, by the way. They lived their life. They overcame so much just for you to be alive today. So go and do it. And also, please grab a copy of Relentless Joy. I'd love to connect with you, and see you soon.
I have to say, I kept thinking over and over again, where are the spiritual mentors? And the fact of the matter is, none of us are perfect. We know we're not perfect. And yet it's dealing with each other as imperfect individuals who are on this journey called life, who are learning and growing. And those of us who have gone a little bit farther, that we can turn around and go, here, I'm going to give you a hand and help you up. I'll be a spiritual mentor to you. I feel so much that this study is showing us we need that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you describe that, because it gives a place for old guys like me to say, hey, can I help you? Or can I at least walk with you?
Exactly.
And I think if there's one thing I've been picking up the last year and a half, Julie, is the importance as we get older to listen better. Listen better. And EFC has made an incredible offer.
Yeah.
And I just want to tell people about this so that if you're interested in this study, they're going to give away 25 free copies of the study. You go to parentingfaith.tv. Parentingfaith.tv, the first 25, you get a free copy. Very interesting what Julie was saying as she talked about this journey called life. And for the next couple minutes, I want to introduce where I'm going to be teaching for the rest of this week. I'm going to be going to a book that kind of is unnerving for me. I love the book, but I also want to stay away from it. It's the book of James. It's a little book near the end of the New Testament, and James talks about what it means to be the real deal. He talks about this journey called life. And Julie didn't realize that she used that phrase, that was actually what I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about navigating the road bumps on this journey of a lifetime. And, obviously out of the program today, some of the road bumps are parenting. How do we handle it? What do we say? What do we not say? But there's also a bigger picture, because as we begin to realize that I am not my own authority, but rather the Lord is, what does it mean to come under his authority? And I want to suggest to you that that's not a bad word, even though it drums up a lot of negative connotations today. Being under God's authority is understanding my place. It's also understanding how much I am loved by him, how much he cares for me, and how he wants to guide me. And so as we just begin in the first couple of verses of the book of James today, he's a person who is under the authority of the Lord. And interesting that for him, Jesus was his half brother. We're going to talk a little bit more about who James was, but I want to ask this question, because James is all about our behavior. And as we think about parenting, parenting is all about behavior. But does my behavior line up with what I'm saying? As Julie mentioned earlier in the program, does my talk match my walk? And that's why the book of James is so challenging. That's why a lot of times we want to avoid it, because he just calls a spade a spade. You begin in the first verse, and he says these words, James, a servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes that are dispersed about. Well, even for a half-brother to say that he's a servant to his brother, just imagine the sibling rivalry that was going on there. And James recognized, though, that Jesus was not just his half-brother. He was God in the flesh. And he says, I want to be under your authority. He said, I'm your servant. It's a powerful statement. And he uses those words even as he talks to the church. He could have said, oh, I'm the brother of Jesus. You better listen to me. But no, he says, I'm a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. That phraseology is actually what directs his whole life and the path that he was on. Ultimately, it led to his martyrdom. But before that happened, he made incredible contribution to the life of the church. We all want to contribute, don't we? We want to make a powerful contribution in the lives of people around us. And me as a dad, I'm ultimately concerned about what impact I'm making on my family, on all my children, and then on the people that I care for as a pastor and in my circle of friends. But it comes back to this whole thing of being a servant, of saying, whose authority am I under? I want to leave you with a question today. Are you ready to step up for a larger life with God? Think about that. Are you ready to step up for a larger life with God? If you were to score yourself, what would you say? No, not yet, or rarely, if ever. What about, well, sometimes I think I want to step up. Or maybe some of you would say, and I hope many of you would, quite often. But what about yes, regularly? We want to help you in your journey with God. We want to help you in this journey of a lifetime to understand the incredible excitement and privilege and peace that passes knowledge when we are walking hand in hand with God on this journey called life. And it starts with being a servant. It starts with saying, Lord, I'm going to let you lead through me and love through me, just as you have modeled that to me. We're going to be unpacking James for the next several days, so stay with us. Thanks for watching, everybody. And to find out more, go to our website, theperspective.tv.